Ten, nine, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, how's everyone doing today? First of all, I give you greetings. And this is the Concern Forum, and I'm your host, Robert Gums. And the truth does matter. Now, today, we're going to look at some of the issues which have infected our country from a slightly different angle here. Now, I think that looking at things from a slightly different angle, it might, give us a better idea of how to grasp and tackle some of these issues, many of which are just plain damn silly, but unfortunately, they have to be dealt with. And with the present atmosphere of divisiveness, we have to talk about them. Now, we're going to investigate the present arguments over this CRT business, for one. And this is primarily going to be the purview of my good friend and mentor here, Mr. David Strong. Now, Mr. Strong, or David, as we call him, he is a noted author. He's also a former Air Force officer, pilot, civil rights activist, human rights activist, teacher, instructor of pilots, and he's also a licensed pilot himself. But basically, he is going to handle the CRT business using his former credentials as an educator. But going back to my end of this show, listen. The main problem, and I always say this, and I know sometimes folks get tired of hearing me saying this. I don't really give a damn because it's the truth, but I'm a registered Democrat. And especially in this day and age, damn proud of it. And what we've done in this country is we have basically let the circus take over from reality. And let me explain that. And I'm not trying to hurt feelings because we are all creatures of the same creator. But I say the major problem that we have in this country right now is that we have a political party that basically they capitalize. Well, I'll put it to you like this. I grew up here in New York in the projects. And one of the things that you don't want people to see in the hood is the fact that you're being taken advantage of, like you're being made a fool out of. And the major problem that we have here in America is that the Republican Party has basically made a career out of making chumps out of working class white Americans. And I think that's one of the things that really sets me off. And I tell you why. You don't see it nowadays like you used to. I'm one of those people. I'm the last part, or the last generation, I would say, that really spent a lot of time in the military. When I say it spent, I'm talking about dealing with folks from different parts of the country. And a lot of those folks out there in so-called Trump country, I served with these folks um, and their older brothers. And as a black man, as an American black man, um, this business about some kind of white replacement theory. Oh God, I think that is it's so much BS. And one of the problems I have with my party, the Democratic Party, is that we need to stand up and call people out. I mean, really call them out. Hit them with the truth stick, basically. That's what we need to do. Because they have done nothing but basically, when I say they, I'm referring to the right-wing Republican Party, so-called conservatives. They've done nothing but work on dividing this country, destroying it. Now you have to ask yourself, who gains from this? Corporations, certain foreign countries. I think it's both, quite frankly. But that is the source of the problem in this country. You have the Republican Party basically trying to scare the bejesus out of white working class people. And I as an American, I resent that. As a black American, I both resent and am ashamed that an American political party has been doing this type of thing. Now, I made some notes last night because I felt, I'm so troubled by all of this. It seems to me that the Republican Party, well, I call it the Insurrectionist Party or the American Taliban. And what they're doing the same type of thing that was done to end Reconstruction. And you have to show them up for the liars that they are. This whole thing, remember, and I'm not blaming it all on Trump either. Trump basically took advantage of a situation that already existed. We're talking about this business about, they're coming to the suburbs. The immigrants are attacking the border, right? And I say, oh, you mean like your grandfather did, okay? When they ran his butt out of Germany. So we have to really take a look at who's saying what, who's doing what. And when you look at your real conservative states, right? Red states, they like to call them nowadays. It's pathetic. It's an ironic joke, unfortunately, a very painful, ironic joke. The guy that has done the most to block Joe Biden's, Build It Back Better plan, the senator, Democratic senator from West Virginia. Now, this guy is like a multimillionaire. Um, his kids are like millionaires. I understand that there's questions been asked about some companies linked to fossil fuels that his family, his daughter, they all connected with, right? Now, be that as it may, I looked up a few things last night. Now, he represents West Virginia, or excuse me, he's supposed to represent West Virginia. Now, you know, West Virginia is, hold on a second here, the most poorest state in the Union. Oh, my bad. West Virginia is the second poorest state in America. The health statistics are shocking. It looks like the so-called third world nation, quite frankly. Now, if I were a senator from West Virginia or Alabama or Mississippi, places like that, as poor and as desperate as my folks are in those states, don't you know that when Joe Biden says, well, yeah, we need 3.5 trillion, these are supposed to be the guys and gals that stand up, jump on the table, and say, the hell with the 3.5. We need 10 trillion. Yeah. Those folks from, like I say, West Virginia, Alabama, Mississippi, those red states, right? Because there are people that are starving, they're not being educated, their health's not being taken care of. And yet, and see, here goes the other part of the problem. Those folks elect these type of people. So I thought that there was a word that describes when you want to go and and you get beaten, like in an abusive marriage, right? Isn't there something psychological about people who hang around and love being abused over and over again? I don't get that. Why do you vote for folks that don't believe that you have a right to a decent quality of life? And see, I think historians will look back at this period of American history and they will marvel at the ability of the Republican Party to be able to literally BS their voters time and time again, and yet still win re-election. If you come by my house, and every time you come to that house, you smack me upside the head. You come by Monday, I get smacked. You come by Tuesday, I get smacked. You come by Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, I get smacked. And you take a baseball bat and knock out my knees. Don't you think that somewhere along the line, I would say, listen, Joe, I think that maybe we would both be better off if you stopped coming by my house. I mean, that's real simple, right? But that's the conundrum. It doesn't seem to work that way. This is the only country, perhaps I think maybe North Korea, where people cling to the feet and kiss the feet of the people who brutalized them. And I use the term brutalized because if you go to some of these red states and you see how people live, that is a number one brutalization. But why do people go for that? Now, we know that in the case of battered wives, there's a certain psychological, I don't know, transposition or some psychological thing, right? That will make that lady stay in the situation where her spouse, her partner, is abusing the hell out of her. You know, it might be because there's children involved. It might be because this lady is unskilled. So if she's scared that she breaks up her home and either gets this guy thrown out or she takes off, that she won't be able to do anything in terms of earning a living on her own because she's unskilled. But yet, with voters, well, put it this way. Your voting, your participation in the political process should not put you on the same level as an abused spouse. And see, that's what I don't understand. Like those folks that were there trying to have the insurrection on January 6th, or some of these people that you catch at these Trump rallies, and they're yelling and screaming, yeah, we're not going to take it anymore. And I'm like, would you please specify what the hell is it that you are angry about? What is it that you are upset about? What the hell do you want? In other words, do you want all people of color to disappear? No. Well, okay, that's one thing, all right? But unfortunately for you, that's not going to happen, right? You're not going to make zillions of people just disappear because for some reason you have been taught that these people are your enemy. And I'm not trying to be a snob. I'm nobody's snob, okay? I'm born right here in the projects, the tenements, from the tenements to the projects, okay? However, I do believe that here in the United States of America, you should not feel that your livelihood is in jeopardy because some youngster tried to come across the fence for a better way of life and maybe to save his or her life. And so they want to, pick fruit, stuff canned hams in those Smithfield cans, right? You want to yell about how the price of food is going up. Well, hell, you have more people from Mexico going home. You have basically sweated the immigrant, thrown them in cages. So many of them, they've decided to go home. And if you don't have that workforce there, well, who the hell is going to harvest and pick the food? Are you going to do it? Are you going to find me an American agri-farmer, agribusiness guy? He's not going to pay you $20 to pick grapes or oranges or lettuce or what have you, or to work in the food processing industry. So what is it that you want? And if you are so concerned about, global trade, and you feel that it's hurt you, well, why do you vote for people that make these policies, that make these treaties? And then you want to yell and scream about, okay, well, the Democrats have done this, or look, the problem I have with the Democratic Party as a Democrat is the fact that we are not tough enough. We don't stand up enough. And that's our problem. And we need to be out there across the country. Every day, we should be holding seminars in the communities, talking to people, And when we're doing something, when we're trying to conduct a particular piece of legislation, we need to be out in the community. We can get the space. If you're an elected official, you can get someplace to have your rallies, not your rallies or your info meetings and things of that nature. This is one of the reasons why we are in the state that we're in. And I tell any American voter, beware of a politician that is not fighting for education. We have this thing, which looks like we're getting ready to lose it, and this is the ability for people to go to community college for free. 2 years, 2 freaking years, right? And the Republicans want to stomp on that. And of course, these so-called Democrats, such as Manchin, and what's their name, Sinema from Arizona. Now, it comes to my mind, why would a politician be afraid for people to get at least a good, basic, higher education? Well, obviously, that's generally Republicans and a few Democrats that fear an educated electorate. And quite frankly, if I was a senator from West Virginia or Mississippi or Alabama, yeah, I would be damn scared to see my constituents be able to get a better education. And this whole thing about well, college is really no big deal. Yes, it is. Education is always a big deal. What is it Thomas Jefferson said? Something to the effect of he had never heard of a republic being able to be ignorant yet free. And that's one of the things that I do agree with Thomas Jefferson about, because you cannot be ignorant and maintain your freedom. And the question has to be asked, why would somebody who supposedly is accountable to the public do everything they can to stop the public from getting public education? And please, I don't want to, it's time for people to grow up. And yes, it's time for people to get woke. And yes, I probably use that term woke, because this idea about what we can and cannot afford to pay for. So you're telling me that you can't afford decent health care for your citizens, and you can't afford an associate's degree for your citizens, but you can afford to kick around for 20 years in Afghanistan, and at the end of the day, you haven't accomplished a damn thing. The only thing that comes close to an accomplishment was that you killed bin Laden, and you didn't have to stay over there over 20 years to do that. So what's the problem? And yes, corporate America needs to be held accountable. When they need their tax breaks, their government under the table, no one stops them. No one makes a big issue about that. But yet, trying to educate and make our country healthier, that draws all this static. And for you folks out there, you independents and you Trump supporters, has it ever crossed your mind that the things that would do the most to strengthen our society are the things that one party in particular has always been standing against? Now, don't get me wrong. I grew up, and I've said this a zillion times. I grew up in the Republican family. My parents were rock rib Republicans. My old man was a district leader in Harlem, in West Harlem, right? Plenty of black and Hispanic people when I was growing up were registered Republicans. But back then, you had decent men and women in the Republican Party. You had people like Eisenhower. You had people like Dirksen. You had people like Jack Kemp. You had people like my friend, Jake Javits. And I literally mean that. Next to my dad, he was the one that mentored me in terms of politics. And they should name more than just the one coliseum that we have here for Senator Jake, because he was a fine, good, decent man. Those are the type of people that we had in the Republican Party. But you know, a guy gave us some warning. I should say him and his wife. He said in '64 that the Republican Party needed to be careful because the forces of the right are trying to change the party. And they are turning it into a racist type organization. And that we need to be very careful about that. Now, he was a great guy. His wife was a great woman. Both of them fought for ERA. Both of them fought for choice. And he was the governor of Michigan for a good while. Oh, and by the way, his name was Romney. And yes, he was the father of the present senator from Utah. And that basically was your Republican Party. But then, unfortunately, people like Pat Buchanan and a few other folks, along with Dick Nixon, got the idea that we could take white Southern males who are Democrats, but they're angry at the National Party because in the 60s, the National Party basically became the party of civil rights. And unfortunately, a lot of racial Southern men didn't like that. And so Buchanan and Nixon, they harvested in the South. And over a period of time, it was a stretch, but that's why by the time you get to 2000, you really see the Republican Party become practiced in using issues as racial wedge issues. And that's what happened to the Republican Party. So that now the idea of the Republicans being the party of Lincoln, it's a sad joke. If I was a member of the Lincoln family, I would be suing the Republican Party because they are no closer to Lincoln than the cat in the hat, quite frankly. And it's time that people start to realize that. You know, it's also time to recognize the fact that this is a party of terrorists now. Because you have so many people in the Republican Party saying, well, if we don't win the election, let's go out and shoot people. Let's shoot the winners. Now, I'm just curious, what America are they referring to? Is this the future that most Americans want for their kids and grandkids? I think that we really need to sit down and get our priorities straight. And when I see people representing the Republican Party, like what's that clown's name? And that's clown with a capital C, for Missouri, Josh Hawley. You know, I look at these guys, Josh Hawley, Tom Cotton out there in Arkansas, And of course, we have Cancun Cruise. All right. I mean, the Three Stooges. Carly belongs, he belongs behind bars, right? Insurrection is when you try to stop the function of the government. And that fits Cruz, Hawley, and a few other Republicans to the T. And it's time that the Democratic Party stand up and say so. I don't understand. I don't understand why Trump isn't in jail. I mean, I look, you look. We saw what this guy said. We saw what he did. I keep hearing about, yeah, they're getting close. What's to get close to? He's there. He has been there. And it's time that Democrats act appropriately. The worst thing that we can do is to show this kind of weakness. If we continue this, we're not going to have a country. And I don't know about you, but I kind of like the old US of A, all right? We are not perfect. And that's something else that Americans need to recognize. This is a country founded in the spirit of the Enlightenment, right? Which talks about the perfectibility of man. Not that man is perfect, but that man has the potential to strive for that perfection. So we make mistakes. And that's America. And we have done some real whoppers. And it ain't just about me being black, all right? Look at the history of labor here in the United States. Look at what happened to the indigenous people here. You have a former president of the United States sitting in the baseball stadium acting like a stupid 15-year-old with the tomahawk chop, which most Native organizations will tell you that's quite offensive, and I can see why. Well, yeah, here goes Trump. Anything to try and hit that racist button, anything to appeal to that type of nonsense. And now we have this business about CRT, which is something that was taken out of law school. And people who are interested in history are accused of trying to turn 6 and 7-year-old white kids into emotional wrecks by saying, oh, little Tommy, you are a racist, and you'll always be a racist, which is more BS. And it just, it really sickens me to see the type of crap that many of our fellow Americans fall for. And it's time that people be called out for it. Now, I have my feelings about this, but I want us to hear from the educator what he feels about this viewer about CRT. So what do you think, Professor?
Well, first of all, I must say that I'm not a member of any party. I put that in front. The CRT discussion is really something that has to do with what people used to study in law school about the intersection with the codifying, putting in laws that have to do with race. And that's essentially what it is. The real problem is those in power do not want people to know any kind of history, real history about the country. They don't emphasize the truth about history, American history. You can go from the kindergarten to the 12th grade and be completely ignorant about American history unless you do your own study. Because those who are in charge, they control the books that students get in schools, and you don't get any books that do much more than train you to be loyal, be patriotic, and they don't talk about real history. They don't talk about the fact that settlers came from Europe and were involved in ethnic cleansing, that's kicking the people off their lands, that they were involved in various massacres and genocide, and that the people who lived here, the indigenous people who were here, had their own governance, their own nations, and all you're going to hear is about the 13 colonies. It's like someone coming to your place and deciding that you don't count anymore. We're going to make your place their place. That's the 13 colonies. We have things in our history like the Louisiana Compromise, or when the United States bought from the French.
Oh, Louisiana Purchase, yeah.
Louisiana Purchase.
Yeah.
How are you going to be buying something from somebody who doesn't own it? Somebody else is living there, but students are taught that that's normal. They bought it from France. France decided they just wanted it.
Let me, real quick, you opened a small door there that people need to know about. David just mentioned about the Louisiana Purchase. Mm-hmm. And see, the thing, another bit of irony is that how many Americans know that they have Haiti to thank for us getting that vast territory? What's that? Almost a third of the United States of our landmass, and that we have Haiti to thank for that, because what Napoleon wanted to do, there was a lull in the French-English, Napoleonic Wars around 1802, 1803. Napoleon wanted to take advantage of that because he wanted to build a Western empire in the Western Hemisphere. And Jefferson got wind of that, because by this time Jefferson was the third president. He was in office. And the idea of the United States, the new United States, being the next door neighbor to Napoleon, to the master generalissimo of the Western world, him being our next door neighbor, scared the living crap out of old Tom Jefferson. So what he decided to do, he sends envoys to France to say, listen, how much did you take for the port city of New Orleans? See, Jefferson only wanted to buy New Orleans. He didn't, he wasn't even thinking about all the rest of that territory out there. Napoleon, his dream of an empire in the Western Hemisphere was smashed because of the Haitian Revolution, which, by the way, remember, Haiti, I think, was one of the only countries with Toussaint Louverture, Dessalines, those other guys, right? Only folks to defeat Napoleon, right? Because of that, because the slaves successfully had revolted, because they got wind that Napoleon was going to bring slavery back to what they called back then Saint Dominique, which we now know was Haiti, and the Dominican Republic. they had already won their independence, but like I say, Napoleon said, I'm going to have a new empire in the West. So I'm going to reinstitute slavery. And when they heard that, boom, it was off to the races. They whipped Napoleon. Napoleon has Britain and the Allies at his back, and he says, damn, I'm going to need money because I'm going back to war. Oh, what am I going to do? And then here comes Tom Jefferson saying, hey, man, listen, I want to talk to you about buying that city there, New Orleans, at the mouth of the Mississippi. And Napoleon said, hey, well, maybe this might work out. So he tells Jefferson, well, listen, I'm not going to sell you the city of New Orleans, but what I will do, I will sell you this whole vast territory, cheap. And it's still the cheapest land deal in world history. I think it's like about 3.5 cents an acre. That's how much America paid for the Louisiana Territory. And Jefferson didn't know what to do. He's saying, I don't have the authority, I don't think, to buy this mass, amount of land without Congress's permission. Napoleon says, listen, going once, going twice. So Tom Jefferson says, well, screw Congress. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to get this territory, New Orleans, and everything that goes with it. And so that's what happened. And that's how the United States, not doubled, like about 3 times, almost 2.5 times its size was the Louisiana Territory. And all that came about as a result of the slaves refusing to be re-enslaved in Haiti. And look how America shows its thanks to the nation of Haiti. They built us up. That's where we really started on the road to becoming a superpower. And that's all thanks to those black folks in Haiti. How many of you learned that in school? Please continue, my brother.
Well, the point is when Haiti did that, they had blockades around Haiti, and Haiti had to pay reparations to the French, and that's unfortunate.
Well, see, this is what happens, and I've always said this. The reason we have, from 1950 onwards, right? We have always had people coming back home in body bags over there at Fort Dix, the Air Force Base outside of Fort Dix. And the reason is because you cannot go around the world saying that you are a world power. You can't understand people in other parts of the planet because you don't try to understand yourself, quite frankly. And this is our problem, and this is what we're trying to prevent. And to me, the Republicans, the conservatives, they are trying to use CRT as just another one of those social, some kind of social weapon to help to keep us divided.
Well, it's the latest iteration of the divide and conquer technique.
Exactly.
If you're going to rule people, you have to divide them. And the people who rule here are masters at it. This is the largest and richest empire in the world at this time. And you have a small group of people who are at the top of this, and they have to rule a whole lot of people. In this case, you have about 330 million people that live here, and as an empire, they rule in a lot of other places who have to go along with what the United States wants. So this is all over the world, and they have to maintain a large military, which is a very expensive item. And I know about that. I was in the military, and I know the waste that goes on.
Same here.
And the point is, you have to control the people, and the best way to control them is what they call divide and conquer, and they are masters at it. They are masters at dividing people up, and that's how you win. Now, a small group of people at the top can control a large group of people who are on the bottom. And as it is now, the richest people here are getting richer, and many people are getting poorer and poorer. So when we talk about education, I put it another way. I call it training. It's like when I was in the military, you get training. Education is a different thing because education empowers you. When you're trained, you are useful to those people in charge. So when children go to school, they learn things that train them to do skills that are useful to those people at the top. When you talk about cinema and mansion, I laugh about that because they are really Republicans in Democratic clothing. You know, they're pretending to be Democrats, but they're really Republicans. And, you know, it's not surprising that people coming from very poor places like Manchin, and he's a multimillionaire, and they put him in as senator. I mean, that's so ridiculous, but that's the type of thing that happens when you train people to be ignorant. And in this case of the United States, they use this concept of race, and they have people divided by race, by ethnicity, by their language, by their male or female, or, you know, any way you can divide people up, that is how you control people. So that's how they win and we lose. Now, Bob has brought up the fact that we don't have these things like a good health service. We don't have service for the older people who are at the last stages of life. We don't have things that people need like housing and whatnot. At the same time, we have spent many trillions of dollars on military equipment, like in the case of Afghanistan. And, you know, it's mentioned that we haven't got anything out of it, but the fact is that the contractors, and as a military person, people should know that you have tremendous contractors who deliver services and equipment. So they make out fine, even though you lose in Afghanistan and other places. So, you know, that's main point is you got to keep people trained, not educated to the point where they can think well for themselves, and you got to keep them divided.
Now, that business about keeping people divided, you know, somebody asked me, well, looking at the whole history of relationship between people of color and white America and the civil rights and human rights movements, the fight against slavery in this country, who do I see? Who are my heroes? And I tell them, first in my pantheon is a guy, a good New Yorker, named John Brown. That is my hero. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not,
amen.
Thank you. And believe it or not, behind him, I say Abraham Lincoln. And I'll tell you why. John Brown gave his life and the life of some of his sons in the attempt to free black people here in America. That's number one. He didn't have to do that. Didn't have to be there. That's the first thing. Second thing, now some people have had problems with Lincoln, especially early Lincoln, right? Well, number one, Lincoln was always against slavery, okay? And that's something that you can't take away from him. Now, as far as the other thing, or the other aspects of Lincoln, the thing I love about old Abe is the fact that he showed his potential for growth. Now, Lincoln, 1850 or 1854, yeah, a large part of him would be what we would nowadays consider to be racist. But I've studied Lincoln, and I watched how this man grew, so that by the time of his assassination, the things that Frederick Douglass had to say about him, I mean, it really moved me. Because we don't want all human beings to be perfect, but we want them to be able to grow. And to me, Lincoln is a perfect example of what happened when a man grows. He grew spiritually, he grew intellectually. And like John Brown, he was one of those people that he literally gave his life in the cause of human freedom. Because remember, it was decided to assassinate him after he made his second inaugural speech, when he said that, yes, it's time that we give. Now, he was referring to, primarily black veterans and men who had worked with, with the government, with the military, etc. But the very idea that he said, yes, black men should have the vote. Because remember, women did not vote at that time, unfortunately. But for Lincoln to say that, and then, well, we all know, or we should know, what his assassin, his soon-to-be assassin, John Wilkes Booth, had to say about that. When Lincoln said, yes, we want to see about black veterans and those educated blacks having the right to vote. And John Brown, upon hearing that, said, well, he's for nigger suffrage, and we have to put him down, period. So yeah, he gave his life in the cause of human freedom. And those are my two big heroes. And not to mention all those New Englanders and white Midwesterners, and even a few white Southerners who ran the Underground Railroad. So this business about, oh yeah, well, I want to see all white men, all young white men, period. I want to see them replaced. That is it's a lie. It's filth. And to me, by you trying to start a rumor like that, you're telling me that you want to basically destroy the United States because you would rather see us cutting each other's throats than working to build together in this country. Mm-hmm. Because, and this is for you Trump supporters out there as well, you're going to have to do it. See, either we are going to, sooner or later, America, we're all going to have to, put it this way, we are all going to have to sit down at the table. We will sit down at the table, or the house will just burn around both of our heads. Mm-hmm. There's no two ways about it. And I would much rather see us work together, people of all colors in this country. And this is the thing that disgusts me so much about today's Republican Party. They have become a party of terrorists. And that's very sad. I, God knows, me and my dad used to have some great arguments at the dinner table. And see, that's something else I give my dad credit for. I hope you're hearing that, Pop. He never told me, he never told me what to think, but he taught me how to think.
I think one other element that people don't know much about is the concept of a caste system we have here. And people don't understand how it works. So I think people ought to learn about it. My latest book, Playing the Game, this comes up somewhat. Now, here's how it works. You have a caste system among the people who are here. You have the people they call white people, and you have, that's the top caste, and you have one below, which is called the black caste. And the idea of these terms, white and black and so forth, is really incorrect. Nobody has absolute white skin.
No, that's correct.
And the people you see here, who you call black people, they have brown skin. They don't have black skin. They have brown skin. And people are all in between the black designated ones and the white designated ones. So a person who is in the white group of the ruling class, the professional class, the petty bourgeoisie, the poor people, as long as they have that type of skin that you have from many European people, you're in the white caste. And if you have the brown skin of the black caste, and even if you're in the white caste and down at the bottom and very poor, you in the caste with the people at the very top. And if you're at the bottom of the white caste, you're still ahead of the people in the black caste. So that's how they fool people and get people against each other. And that's very important to understand how this caste system works.
Well, see, the danger with that, and I'm getting ready to wrap it up here because we, unfortunately, running out of time. But that's one of the dangerous things about this whole racial identity business. I mean, it's marvelous that you know who you are, but you have to keep in mind the fact that there's no such thing as race. Any anthropologist will tell you this.
We're the same species.
Yeah, we're the same species, right? And the thing about race is a relatively new concept. It's not a scientific concept. What it is a political and cultural concept. But there's no such thing as different races of humanity, right? It is just a word, as I said, relating to political, social, cultural. But what we have done, unfortunately, it has become so weaponized. And somebody, explain to my fellow Americans, and this is not necessarily being political, but it's just being truthful. The Republican Party has not had anything to show for the American people. Now, this is 2021, all right? So I will give them the last couple of years, right? And say 2008, 2009, right? When this whole Obamacare thing blew up and what have you. The Republicans since then have had the opportunity to give a health care plan. They still haven't done it. What's that now? 11 years? 14 years? And they still haven't come across with a health care plan. They had the election last year. And my goodness, these people did not even have a party platform. For the first time in American political history, a party did not have a platform. So what you saw there, but that is because of the fact that they know all they need to do is to divide people with messages of hate so that people will forget about everything else, things that are important.
Divide and conquer.
There you go, divide and conquer. And see, as a nation, as a supposedly superpower, how long do you think we're going to be able to survive in this type of a manner? We have things that need to get done. Our infrastructure really is at the bottom of the basement when it comes to first world nations. Our healthcare system, for us to be a first world nation, is a joke. And we need things that need to be done. But all this party does, it runs around inspiring hate, inspiring insurrection, and nothing gets done. I said before, I will say it again. And I mean no disrespect to anyone, ethnic background. But if you would just wake up and realize this Republican Party, these guys out here today, they are playing you for a chump. And it makes me angry because I hate to see anyone being played. The only people who benefit are the wealthy, put it this way, the wealthy who have no conscience, right? Religious fanatics, and race haters, basically. You know, with the anti-black, anti-Hispanic, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic. You know, it's madness. And our country we cannot afford this. Our house is burning. And instead of bringing water to put out the flames, we have the Republicans trying to inspire their members to go out and kill people that don't agree with them or don't look like them. And I will tell you one other thing. Jewish people, Asian people, indigenous people, black people, you think that they are part of today's Republican Party. You are lying to yourselves or you just don't give a damn. Because the handwriting is on the wall. People in Sydney, Australia demonstrated in front of the American embassy about the racism that we have in law enforcement in this country. Sydney, freaking Australia. We need to sit down and we need to take a look at who we are and where we're going and recognize that we need each other. And that's the bottom line, folks. Listen, I thank you for having us in your homes today, and take care of yourselves. Stay well, stay safe, and love each other. This is the Concerned Forum, and we will see you again, same time, same place, same channels. Take care. Thank you. I think that was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
What time is your ride leaving?
15:22.
Okay.